Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today to the March installment of Indiescussion, A2IM's panel series where we speak with experts from our community about subjects that are heavily impacting the independent sector. For anyone who doesn't know me already, my name is Alyssa Mark, and I'm the Director of Label Member Relations at A2IM, the American Association of Independent Music. We're a trade association for independent record labels and music service companies all across the United States. If you're interested in learning more about membership to A2IM, please reach out to membership@a2im.org, and we'll make sure somebody gets back to you right away. That email should be dropped in the chat in just a second. So before we jump into today's topic, I quickly wanted to flag that we have a few fun member events coming up in the next couple of months. Pan Am Indie Summit is a brand new conference we developed this year that will take place next month on Thursday, April 15th. Designed to connect North, Central, and South America to facilitate new commerce opportunities for our members, this is a one-day virtual event that will cover topics ranging everywhere from import and export of IP throughout those regions, market overviews for specific territories, and more. This is a members-only event, so you must be part of A2IM to participate. Again, somebody should drop that registration link in the chat in just a second. And a little bit further away, but something to keep in the back of your mind, we also have our annual Indie Week conference coming up later this year in June 14th through 17th to be exact. Indie Week is the largest international independent music conference, and once again, we'll be holding this in a virtual environment, this time on a brand new and improved platform. So today's panel is, just a taste, if you will, of what you can expect to see at that event. We run panels ranging on all topics from physical distribution to ARPU to D2C. We have workshops with the largest DSPs, networking opportunities, and much more. Of course, everything is closed out with the Libera Awards, our annual awards gala celebrating the success of independent artists and the businesses behind them. We just announced our final nominees this week. So again, last time, somebody should drop that RSVP link in the chat below, mark it on your calendars, and we hope to see you then. All right, on to the good stuff. I'm very excited for today's panel and have been looking forward to having this discussion since way back in October of last year, when we actually submitted this for South by Southwest's panel picker. As you may have imagined, unfortunately, we did not make the final round, but we were actually in the final 50 out of thousands upon thousands of entries. So, it was still a nice way to close things out there. This panel is not supposed to be a year in review per se, but more so an in-depth look into the way that select labels from our community not only managed to stay afloat during the pandemic, but actually thrive in some sort of a weird parallel way, if you will. I do want to note that we'll be focusing on positive success stories from the membership today, but this by no means discounts any hardships that any other independent record label went through in the past year. The primary remit of A2IM above all else is to support the independent recorded side of the industry, and we saw firsthand the uncountable suffering that so many of our dear members went through. Some were unfortunately not as lucky as others. So we acknowledge that fact before jumping into the conversation today, and we wish everybody out there who is still holding it down, even if it's just barely, the best of luck in making 2021 a better and a stronger year ahead. Hopefully some of what we discussed today can help you guys get back on track. Alrighty, enough from me. Let's bring on our panelists and get this conversation started. So first, I would like to welcome Rosie Lopez, president of Tommy Boy Records, based in New York City. Hey, Rosie.
Hey. How are you?
Up I'm good. How are you?
Excellent.
Next up, we have Rob Filomena, the COO and CFO of Nacional Records, based in LA with multiple offices around the world.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Rob. And then last up, we have Trevor Peterson, founder and CEO, of Fire Talk, based right down the street from me, actually, here in Brooklyn.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good.
Of course. Thank you guys for kind of sticking to this for the last 4 months. I know we started this way back last year, so I appreciate you holding on to the interest. So before we jump into everything, I thought it would just be beneficial for our viewers if you guys could give like a very brief rundown of the label, the size, your roster, and so on, just so we have an idea of when we talk about some of these creative ways that we stayed afloat, how they can be relevant to the people who are watching today. So Rosie, would you like to kick things off?
Sure. I'm the president of Tommy Boy Boy is a label that started in New York City by Tom Silverman in 1981. Originally made noise worldwide with Planet Rock, which is a pivotal hip hop record, which I think you all know. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, and amongst the roster, we've got people like Naughty by Nature, House of Pain, Coolio, Digital Underground, RuPaul, De La Soul, Capone Noriega, and lots of other great artists from 80s, 90s, hip hop. And recently we also acquired Amherst Records, which includes the Stylistics and Van McCoy and some great disco classics. So pretty much from the 80s to the early 90s, we've got everything pretty much on lock, and we're focused on catalog. We do release some new music, but the main focus of Tommy Boy Music is catalog.
Awesome. Thank you, Rosie. Rob, you want to go next?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Rob Filomena, and I'm the COO and CFO of Nacional Records and its parent company, Industrial Works, where we work with different artists in lots of different ways and in lots of different genres from all over the Spanish-speaking worlds. Nacional was started, I think, 16 years ago by my partner, Tomas Cookman. And we've worked over the years with artists such as Manu Chao and Bomba Stereo, Anna Tijoux, and the Libera-nominated Jungle Fire, which we're really happy about. We're 20 people spread out from our headquarters in LA. We've got some people in Madrid, myself in New York, Barcelona, Mexico City, Bogota, and London. And in addition to the label activities, we're also engaged in things like artist management and booking for our artists outside the US. We also put on live events, including the Latin Alternative Music Conference, which is an annual event held every year in New York in July. This year will be the 21st year, and it'll be our second year of doing it virtually.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. And last up, Trevor.
Hi, I'm Trevor Peterson. I'm the founder and owner of Fire Talk Records. We're a Brooklyn-based new music label. We focus most of our energy on emerging artists, mostly guitar-based artists, some of which are Dead, Deeper, P.R.X., Mamalarkey, a couple of new projects, Pax and Mia Joy we're currently working on. And yeah, we're based in Brooklyn, a very small team, a small label. There's 3 of us that work for Fire Talk, and our sort of tagline is purveyors of the underground. We kind of pride ourselves in finding new artists that literally might even be releasing their first track and bringing them up. That's our focus.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Excuse me. Yeah, it was very important when we were putting this panel together to make sure that we had adequate representation of all different types of labels. We've got some large ones on here. We've got some small ones like Trevor just mentioned. We wanted to make sure that a lot of the topics and discussion points that we'd be talking about today would be applicable to everybody who's watching. So just something that we made sure of. But let's get started, guys. So to start things off, I would love it if you could give us a little bit of an understanding of where your mindset was prior to COVID. So, what were your original plans for the label in Q1 and Q2, and how did you have to shift those once we entered lockdown?
Who wants to start? I'll start.
Yeah.
So, we were locked and loaded for 2020, really in all phases. As I mentioned, we do a bunch of different things. So on the label side, full slate of new releases. On the management booking side, we had a full summer festival season of bookings. I think we had 75 bookings get canceled immediately around March 15th. And we also had our Latin Alternative Music Conference, which was going to be at the 20th anniversary. So we were looking forward to having a great event there. So 3 pillars of our business, all of which got, knocked around the minute, we were talking about it earlier, the minute really South by Southwest was called off. That was really the moment when we sort of knew that we needed to circle the wagons and start making other plans, because this is real.
Yeah, that was, like I was saying to you guys earlier, that was kind of, I feel like, the defining moment for A2IM. Richard Burgess, our CEO and president, had kind of been warning us about things a little bit in advance. And I think everybody was kind of like, it'll blow over, not a big deal. And then, we heard the South by announcement, and that was kind of just, everything went down from there afterwards. I saw it was like an immediate reaction.
Yep.
I go next if you like.
Sure.
This is our 40th birthday. So Tommy Boy turns 40 this year. And so in addition to having a lot of physical products planned and scheduled, we also had a tour that we were working on. We were actually working on two different tours. One was for the anniversary of Jock Jams, which was one of Tommy Boy's more successful compilations. And the other was just a Tommy Boy 40th anniversary tour. And so both of those pretty much got pulled out from under us, and we had to replan. Also, with so many questions about when physical was going to be open, and Amazon shifting their focus from all types of goods to really necessities, and definitely also concerned us. We didn't want to have a lot of product sitting in the warehouse. And so that our plans basically shifted to digital. And that's pretty much, I think we're really just starting to feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel now. And so we are going back to our original plans, which was to get the physical product going. And who knows, we might even plan a tour for next year. But this year we're going to lay low, focus on physical and digital, and not make any big plans until we know better.
Sure. Are you guys still healing from some of the halts in the supply chain from physical last year? Like the releases that were supposed to come out then, are they still not available now?
Well, the biggest problem is that originally a lot of the plants shut down. So at first they were shut down except for a few. And then COVID started to hit the warehouses and the pressing plants. And at that point they'd go to skeleton crews. And it was like, well, we'll get you on as soon as we can. And so release dates have certainly shifted for us in particular. We're now working on physical products. And when I say physical, it's really about vinyl and collectible products. That's what we're focused on for this year. But we're looking at 6 months, in some cases, lead times. And some products that we were hoping to have out this year are going to shift into next year. I think we're all going through it. It doesn't help that the major labels are releasing everything possible on vinyl, and really hogging up a lot of the bandwidth. But I think we're all probably struggling with that same issue. But yeah, absolutely, it definitely impacted us.
Sure. And then T, do you have anything you want to add?
For us, it was sort of like a multi-tier kind of retooling throughout the year. Honestly, I feel like we took a few different pauses to reevaluate kind of how things are going in the immediate, March sort of area. We had 4 of our bands were out on pretty substantial tours at the time. So we were in that moment, we were dealing with every day on the phone, trying to like talk through with our artists and their booking agents, like, do we call the tour off? Like when do we, should we keep plowing forward? Because in the early days, we had a South by Southwest, an official South by Southwest showcase that a lot of these artists were touring down to. So we were kind of in the fold of like helping them make the decision whether to come off the road. And, it's kind of really looking back, like stop any kind of like income stream that they had going on as artists at the time. So that was the most difficult thing. And then as soon as we got through that phase, it was like then kind of doubling down and looking at our release schedule and saying, well, wait a second, like does this release schedule make sense? Because we kind of live and die by indie retail on our side. Like physical record stores are by far our biggest sort of, our biggest marketplace is a small label. And when all of the indies kind of closed their doors, then it was like, we need to rethink a few of these plans. So luckily we had a short window kind of to make some decisions, but I guess on top of all of that, we also had a couple of record store day titles also that like were in the mix here, like getting moved and all of that. So we decided really quickly that, we're going to try and stick to our release schedule as much as possible, but we're just going to bump things back. we think by summer things will look different. So we're going to move things back to the summer. And in the end, that for us paid off. It was the right call, but we had no way of knowing it was going to work out okay. So by the time the records that we moved came out, stores were open again, and we were able to move product. And as we all know, like vinyl went bananas, and we sold more vinyl than I think anybody was expecting this year and could have planned for. So that's what happened for us.
Good. I'm glad it ends in a happy ending. And before we go on, I just have to say, Rosie, I have Jock Jams 1 and 2 on CD. And that was like my lifeline growing up. But
really
so you
we were going to have cheerleaders. I mean, it was really a great tour. Who knows if I do it next year? But the idea was that families would come out. It wasn't just the parents, but they'd bring the kids, and it would be, we immediately realized this is not going to happen. That was like the first thing we knew we had to pull. It was unfortunate, but those are the breaks.
Yes. Well, I'll be there next year. But so you touched on something good, Trevor. Like you said, originally there was this sense that, this sudden halt would be a temporary thing, right? We thought it might go on for 1 month to 2 months, and then we saw it extend into spring, and then we realized it was going into summer. Once we understood that the next year and afterwards were going to be vastly different than, any of us have ever experienced before in the world, let alone specifically the music industry. How did you guys shift the strategy of your label? What were some of the longer term solutions that you guys implemented and adjusted from your standard way of conducting business?
I mean, much longer lead times on planning for starters. I mean, I don't know if it was touched on yet, but the backlog in manufacturing is real right now. 3, 5, 6 months, depending on who you're working with. So it's no joke. So you really can't schedule with the same flexibility that you used to. We used to freestyle releases a lot. We have artists, they just throw us a single, or they say, hey, I got this album, it's done, let's put it out next week because I got a tour plan. We can't do that anymore. So I think long-term, we're just asking for a lot more lead time. It's just necessary for the planning, and we just don't know what's going to happen. And I think one of the other things that, was touched on a little bit so far is as you have this release slate, and you have this calendar, and you have all these plans, what is a good window to move it to, and especially if you're relying on physical. For us, a lot of our artists are primarily digital, so you have a little bit more flexibility. But so what's a good window? We have albums that we were planning on releasing in 2020 that we still don't have release dates for, because it's always been this game of when's the right time? Is it going to be better then? Is it going to be better in 3 months? Is it going to be better in 6 months? And you just kind of never know. And you get stuck in this, bit of suspended animation, which is what it feels like sometimes.
I think for us,
sure,
we found the dance product, anything that was dance or EDM or club based, we pulled immediately. We knew it was going to be close to impossible to really breaking a dance record without any clubs or bars open. And so I think those are the artists on our roster that probably suffered the most, and we're still holding those singles back. And hopefully the sound won't shift so much that when we're ready to release them later this year, it's kind of moved on and it sounds dated. That's always a problem with electronic and dance. But we did have to shift. We definitely shifted. Initially, we thought, great, we'll focus on direct to fan. Doesn't matter, the retailers aren't open. Discogs is thriving. Let's shift to direct on demand. We love working with Bandcamp. And then we thought, okay, well, who's going to do fulfillment if we're not in the office? Yeah. And we usually fulfill our orders. So then we were like, okay, back to the drawing board. And so now I think what we've realized, what we've learned, which is great, because I think this forced us to really think about and plan for anything, is that we really need to have a great alternative for direct-to-fan solutions. And you got to manufacture way in advance. You can't just wait and do it around 3 months before an anniversary. Like I said, we're now working in some cases a year in advance. And so for us, we're lucky that digital was booming. Other than ad supported, subscription was up. And YouTube has done really, really well for us. It's something that we sort of doubled down on, was creating new assets. And so we said, what do we do at this time if we're not working on physical products or working around tours? We created more content lyric videos and, everything we could for YouTube, and it's paid off. We've seen a really nice increase there. But yeah, I think we just took the time, like most artists did, to kind of create.
Was YouTube a vertical that you guys had really focused on prior to the pandemic, or was that something that, once you had this time and you noticed that physical was going to be down for a while, that's when you shifted the energy?
I have always been just a real passionate supporter of YouTube as a platform. I love the access to data that we get there. And although although the per stream rates aren't there and we're not getting what we feel we should be getting, I'm hoping that it will eventually evolve. But overall, the engagement and the earnings, YouTube is now top 2 for us, which is crazy. And I only see it growing further. And the access to CMS, we do have access to CMS. It allows us to also see trends. Something's popping on TikTok, we know, because we start seeing it on YouTube immediately. And so it is this real hands-on, immediate kind of like platform for us to know exactly where engagement is happening. And it allows us to get in front of things that might be taking off virally. So yeah, no, we've always believed that YouTube was an important platform, and we're over 1 million subscribers there. And we have 2 new releases or 2 new videos that go up every single day. And it's nonstop. And we believe that it's probably one of the most important platforms right now for us.
Absolutely. Do you guys create exclusive content like outside of like lyric videos and music videos, like with the artists, or is it more so focused directly on the music?
It depends on so some artists, we manage their YouTube channel, and other artists, it's mostly topic. Because we're mostly catalog, a lot of our artists are either not active, in some cases they're deceased. And so it's hard to get artist involvement when they don't have an active team that's still trying to market their products. So in that case, we really focus on uploading things to the Tommy Boy channel. That's the one thing I noticed a lot of labels did, was they shifted their focus to artist channels because it was what YouTube thought we should do. I always kind of push back on that because I feel like Tommy Boy as a brand is really as powerful and as well known as a lot of our artists. And so I always felt like we really had to focus on making sure that our platform and our brand created a destination that people could go to that love, let's say, 90s East Coast hip hop and spend hours on our channel consuming it. There are other blog channels, that were basically taking our videos and playlisting them. And so I said, well, if they're doing it and it's our content, why aren't we doing it? We also redubbed our videos with the explicit versions. And although they're not as friendly for advertisers, they improve our listening time and our viewing time. And I think that helped grow our subscriber base. And again, it's because on YouTube, you can read when people are like, why is this Capone and Noriega the clean version? This sucks. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. All videos were originally shot for MTV. So they've all gone these standards and practices that are squeaky clean. YouTube viewers don't want that. They want the explicit versions. So we upload both versions. So yeah, it's an interesting platform. I could talk about it all day.
And Rob and Trevor, were there any platforms that you guys experimented with that, weren't necessarily so successful or weren't something you were putting focus on prior to the pandemic and then just kind of saw it rise?
I would say Twitch turned out to be really important for us. I mean, that was where we ended up broadcasting the LAMC, and it really opened our eyes to how this can really work with musicians in the sort of creator economy. That's an important transition I think a lot of the artists learned during this last year, and something that we tried to coach our artists on was that if you're not going to have touring and streaming is going to be what it is, you're going to get paid quarterly or whatever, you need to really create some kind of a stream for yourself and a connection with your audience. And there are people that have been doing this for years on YouTube, on Twitch. They have this daily conversation with their fans, and they're always kind of in this value exchange between fan and artist. That's a relationship that a lot of artists don't have. A lot of artists don't have that real direct, kind of face-to-face relationship. So, we brought the LAMC to Twitch, and the engagement was incredible. And seeing how active and live that platform was, and how active live streaming was really instructive for us and our artists as another tool in their arsenal to try to connect with fans.
Cool. And what platforms were best for you, Trevor, especially as a smaller label who's, so focused on physical?
Totally. I mean, for us, platforms, we really dove into everything, mainly socials. We focused a lot on growing our Instagram and Twitter presence, and we still continue to this day. We started a TikTok, which we have probably 40 unique pieces of video content on our TikTok now. Not in a way that we're trying to sort of chase any kind of virality, but more in a way that we want to just engage fans of the label. And like Rosie was saying, continue to build that sort of brand relationship with fans of the label, and build the brand up. And, also like Rob was saying, we spend a lot of time, I don't want to say coaching our artists, but having a conversation with our artists and artist management about social media strategy. And even if it's not strategy, just kind of reminding them that, hey, your fans want to see what you're up to, not just what music you make, but what your lifestyle is like. So it's important to, a lot of our artists will push back, and they don't like the idea of creating Instagram content or whatever, which is fine. It totally makes sense. They want to make music, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's important to at least let them know that it's about what their fans want just as much as what they want to do as artists, to connect with those fans. So that's where we're at. But YouTube also, like all of it, we really doubled down just on digital strategy in general. We tried to think about every platform and make sure we're uploading content consistently everywhere. That was one thing that the pandemic certainly made us think about. It's the only way to reach people right now. So we just have to try and do, especially as a small label who, we're trying to build our fan base for our artists and the label like daily. There's nothing built in for us. We don't have years of catalog content or anything like that to, so that's where we're at with it.
Yeah. And it's interesting. A lot of these digital implementations and updates and everything that we did, these aren't things that are just going to help during the pandemic. They're going to continue to strengthen your companies as we move forward anyway. Those are almost like staples. Maybe this was kind of like a push, if you will, for anybody who wasn't necessarily utilizing those channels to their fullest to, really just increase the brand presence, increase revenue stream, increase any type of sync opportunities and so on. So very cool to hear that.
Well, there was an increased focus by all artists on their recorded music, right? Because they couldn't. You have artists that maybe did an album once every couple of years, and then they went out and toured, for the next 2 years. Now I think you had artists sitting in their studios and then just creating. So I think there was an increased focus on what was happening with their recorded music. More so, we got more calls and emails from artists that we, had worked with years ago. We're kind of like, what's going on with our catalog? What can we do, right? Because they see that now this is something that is a primary revenue stream and more important than it's ever been.
Yeah, how did most of your artists fare throughout all of this? I know Trevor and Rob, you guys are probably working a little bit more directly with them than Rosie, since, a lot of them are catalog based for you. But how is the relationships going with everyone? How present were you guys in their lives throughout all of this? What responsibilities were you taking on, when the loss of touring happened and the delays in releases and so on?
I think it varies. Certain artists are more self-sufficient than others. Certain artists need, different artists need different things. So there was a variety of ways that we worked with artists. For the artists that we manage, it was about finding them other types of deals that they could get into. It's about, let's look at their label deal. Let's look at their publishing deal. Let's see what, one of our artists, this big Spanish rapper named Mala Rodriguez, we got her a book deal. She's doing TV stuff now. So it's about finding alternatives for them, outside of the live grind, which is something that they had been, this had been their lifestyle for many years, for most of them. So really, it kind of varied. You know, we knew that we would have to play a role in helping our artists in lots of different ways, and that's really kind of how it ended up playing out. A lot of artists ended up creating stuff and putting out. A lot of artists were doing their quarantine record, right? And we ended up getting a lot of singles and EPs from the artists we work with and putting them out. Certain artists were experimenting with things like yoga and meditation music or lullabies. Let's put that out. Let's put that out. So we were trying to be supportive where we could there, just to kind of like let them, you know, express themselves and get their stuff out there, and, you know, let them be creative in finding ways to sustain themselves during a challenging time.
Yeah, I'd say similar for us as well. I think one thing that we really have focused on the past year, and which is starting to come fruition now, is like thinking creatively about remixes specifically, and also repackaging some of these records that we released during the pandemic, whether it's a deluxe edition with a ton of extra content, or if it's a straight up like, you know, for a couple of the records that we released last year, we commissioned remixes for the whole record, and we're going to drop and run a full remix record campaign this year on the record. So it just adds more life to these records that were released last year. But we were never really in the remix game before, and we've commissioned a lot of them in the past 6 months. So yeah, trying to focus on stretching these songs, you know, and creating more digital content. I think that's where we're at now, and strategizing with the artists and the artist teams to come up with these ideas, you know, is yeah.
Squeezing every penny out of, you know, the content that you already have, if you will. Yeah, that makes total sense. So, you know, everyone is on this panel today because, you know, each of you guys kind of have a unique story as to, you know, how you not only survived lockdown last year, but as we've been mentioning, you were actually able to thrive, if you will. So we've already touched on some of the strategies that you implemented last year that were fruitful. But, you know, Rosie, I know there was like a renewed emphasis on return to catalog for you. Trevor, I know you managed to like grow the revenue of Fire Talk by like an insane amount, like 300% or something. And, you know, what were the other methodologies that helped you to achieve so much success last year?
Is that for
Peloton?
That's for everyone. It's for everyone.
Peloton. We love Peloton.
Yeah.
Someone asked about promo videos, and I would say that us as a company, we've always approached everything as a product or an asset. We don't look at video or anything as a loss leader. So I would say we try to find ways where we can monetize. And I do believe that Twitch is going to be one of these great surprises that we're all kind of scratching our heads going, how are we going to monetize it? And then all of a sudden the gates are going to open and we're going to be blown away by what we actually generate with it. So I do believe that all of these new technologies, we should embrace them. We should find ways to monetize, but I really would highly recommend all independents and artists, don't look at anything that you create as like a promotional freebie. Look at everything as an asset, and those assets have a value, and that intrinsic value is going to follow that asset forever. It's going to be worth possibly more in 20 years than it's worth today. So I would say, you know, don't just focus on frontline, put as much effort into your catalog. You know, look at TikTok. It's a good example of somewhere where sometimes it's the catalog products that really, you know, kind of stick. And it's exciting to see that it's now being reintroduced to a whole new audience, you know, like for Jump Around, you know, to blow up and to have all of these, you know, all of this renewed attention on both Facebook and TikTok is great. And it does add up on other platforms. But I think, you know, it's very easy for us to say, and I think going back to MTV was kind of that first place where we thought, well, it's promo, it's going to pay off somewhere else. And then I think some people did that with SoundCloud, and we did that with YouTube. I would say we probably should stop doing that, and we should start looking at everything as an asset.
I love that. That's great advice.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to the like growth and the positives, for us it was always going to be a growth year. We had laid the groundwork years ago for this. We had a couple of releases that we knew were like we had been building up to them doing what they did. That's where a lot of this growth came from for us. And we have always stressed long lead times. So we had product and we had marketing plans and all of that in like done 6 months prior. Like a few of these campaigns that we ran last year were already like the marketing plan was shelled out. The product was either in production or pretty much done like before the pandemic even hit. So it was just a matter of like moving some pieces around for us. So yeah, but I think it was also like leaning into like when we saw trends like really emerge, leaning into it. Like for us it was Bandcamp. Our revenue, like I'm sure a lot of labels, like exploded 10 times on the Bandcamp platform during mostly driven by Bandcamp Fridays, of course, but also just across the board. And we saw that with the first Bandcamp Friday that this was going to be a big deal because it was huge for us. We had a record that was released that week, like just out of coincidence, which, outperformed pretty much anything we had released, like outperformed anything on that platform ever for us. So we were like, okay, we need to be paying attention to this. And so we retooled a couple of our releases to drop on a Bandcamp Friday, and it worked. We got some press from we noticed a lot of like the press outlets like in our sphere, like Pitchfork and Vice and these kind of places started doing roundups for Bandcamp Friday specifically. So we started pitching just for that roundup and like started to connect the dots specifically with Bandcamp, and that paid off for us. So for us, it was just like identifying trends early and like jumping on it and putting as much energy into that specific trend as we could.
Sure. Did you guys see any other really big trends emerge in the past year, that might not have been so successful if we were in a different state? Like anything unique that, really stood out from the independent community to you guys?
Well, I think virtual shows are something that everybody experimented with quite a bit. And
of course.
To varying degrees of success. I think it was something everyone had to try. We did it with some of our artists. Some of the bigger promoters that we work with in places like Mexico and Spain, they tried their hand at it because they had bunch of sponsors that they were partnered with and they had no shows to put on, so they were experimenting with live shows. I think that's probably here to stay to some degree. I don't, it'll just be another kind of tile in the mosaic of things that you can do to connect with your audience. I think, early on, I think maybe people were thinking that it was going to be bigger than it was. But it's not. There's nothing like a band coming through a local town and going to see them. That's not. It'll never replace that, I don't think. But I think that's definitely something positive that I think people learned how to do and develop the capability for during the pandemic that will probably stick around.
Yeah, definitely. Did you guys have any like really creative campaigns that you were proud of this past year? Anything that you kind of put together last minute and weren't sure if it would work or wouldn't work, and was a total success, total failure maybe? You don't have to talk about it if it was.
Completely unexpected opportunity when Rita Wilson, after she had, I guess her and Tom both got sick and got COVID while they were in Australia. And as she was getting better, she decided to go on Instagram and rap a song that she'd learned for a part that she was playing. And it happened to be Naughty by Nature's Hip Hop Parade. And so she rapped the song in its entirety, like amazing flow. And so I immediately got an email. Then I got an email from Vinny from Naughty by Nature. He's like, Rosie, you seeing this? You see what's going on here? I'm like, yeah, let me reach out to, let's reach out. Let's see if we can do something. So we started finding ways to get to Rita Wilson's people. And she's like, I'd love to do something. Let's see if there's a way to raise money. And so we got together. She recorded the vocals, sent it to us. We had an engineer mix her in with Naughty by Nature. We made it available, and the funds are going to Music Cares. But it was one of those things that came together in a week. and it was everyone really just wanting to do good and wanting to do something. And YouTube was supportive, and, you know, we premiered a video on YouTube, and, you know, it's still out there, still earning, you know, revenue. So it's exciting. But that was like one of those things that just comes out of left field, and you're like, well, what do we do?
Yeah, I would say
I love
for us, it was probably the LAMC, the Latin Alternative Music Conference, that was planned, you know, months prior to COVID hitting. It was going to take place in the beginning of July, like it always does. And for those that don't know, LAMC is a week-long event that happens in New York every year. It's kind of a sprawling event with different venues, partnerships with Central Park Summer Stage, Celebrate Brooklyn. We do workshops at Spotify, at Live Nation. We have panels and a confab. So, you know, it's a big event for us. Everything was locked in, all the programming was done, sponsors were committed, and we had to completely, you know, rethink it at the beginning of April. So we had kind of a couple months to figure it out. We decided to do it virtual. We had no idea if it was going to work. We had no idea what we were doing. We never did anything like it before. We didn't know if the sponsors were going to stick around. We didn't know if anyone was going to show up. But we, you know, through like intense focus and some good fortune and some good partners, we pulled it together. And it was, for us, a big success. Like it's redefined the event, and it's opened up the event to a whole new audience for us. So it was a really, you know, sticking with the sort of positive outcomes, that was one for us, is we got to take a look at what this event might look like in a completely different context and reaching a whole different audience. But it was done very much under the pall of uncertainty that, you know, the whole thing could be a disaster and fall apart. But it turned out to work out really well for us. So that was great.
Oh yeah, I can fully sympathize there, because we also had to do a very quick parallel for Indie Week and shift that completely online. You know, that's a conference that we normally have about like 2,000 attendees internationally coming for, along with the Liberas, which we also had to shift online. And that was just probably the craziest month of my life. And the team that we had behind us was so incredible. And the final products that we put out and the panels that we were still able to get and the attendance we had, it was very overwhelming, to be honest. Do you see yourself incorporating a virtual edition, like always moving forward, even when we get back to live?
Yeah, I think it's too good not to. I mean, it's a flexible platform that you can use. You can pop up events here and there if you want. You can work with different types of artists who maybe can't come to LAMC. You can figure out a way to do something. You can get collaborators together that you wouldn't normally get. So yeah, now that we know how to do it and we know how many people we can reach with it, it's just too good. It's too important not to do it, at least have some virtual piece. I mean, we had, you know, 10 times the viewership for the virtual event. And these are from people all over Latin America who wouldn't normally have the ability to come to New York for a week, you know, get on a plane and fly to New York and spend a week. You know, that's hard for a lot of people to do. But here, being able to consume the content like that free, that was a big shift for us too, is that we made the event free, where it's usually you know, a $200 or $300 ticket to come. We just said, screw it, just throw it up there. We did it on Twitch for free, and it worked out great. So yeah, I can't see us not doing something virtual with it, even when things are completely back to normal.
Very cool.
I hope that becomes a regular thing, that you can either buy a ticket and attend a festival, or you can buy a ticket and watch it from your home. Because I'd love to hit, you know, Reading and all of the electronic festivals from home. Can be a bit of a mess when you go there, but it'd be great to have like a little dance party. I mean, we watched the Dua Lipa live stream, and we had a dance party here in my living room with my little pod, and we had a great time. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this could be a thing. And I don't think it takes away from the people that want to go to the event. But I do think it opens up this entire audience that I think isn't willing to go through the discomfort of sitting in like 100-degree temperatures, but wants to pay. And I would still pay to watch the show. So I'm hoping it sticks around.
Yeah, definitely. I caught Rosie Murphy's live stream that she did. Well, it was like a pre-recorded live event. And again, that was like another incredible, just like standout concert, if you will, for me last year. That, you know, she's based in London and she doesn't really come here so often. So the fact that I was still able to see her do a full performance of the album that she put out last year, which happened to be my favorite album of the year, was like very special for sure. Yeah. So I have a question for you guys. So, you know, we come from different sectors of the industry, so naturally independents were hit differently than the majors. I'm just curious what you felt some of the biggest differences you saw were, you know, in terms of coping mechanisms, any type of monetary support that major labels may have had access to that independents don't, you know, how they had artist support, you know, anything that, you know, really stood out to you that was a difference.
I think all the same imbalances were there, right? I would actually say that indies were on slightly better footing this year. I mean, I'm glad COVID happened in 2020 and not 5 years ago, because I do think there are more capital sources available to independents now than there ever have been before. Anyone who's been in the industry for a couple of years knows that there's been an influx of capital. Distributors have more money. There are more investors, around interested. So I think that's a positive, I think, for independents, was that they're on better footing now, at least as far as access to capital goes. But I think all the other imbalances between majors and indies were still there. I didn't see anything that, to me, stood out as anomalous.
No, I would just say that I think something that we do need to find a way to address is just the access to pressing plants. I think we're being boxed out by the majors, and they're basically saying, let's repress everything on vinyl, lock up the pressing plants, and let's price them at $12.99. And it's a terrible thing for independents, and I think it does hurt us in two ways. One is a downward pressure on pricing, and we would rather create limited products, make them really beautiful, and make them very exclusive with a higher ticket item, and they really just want to fill the bins, so I think that's a concern.
I would double down on that concern. Because the size of the sort of pressing amounts that we put in, our jobs are very small, like 2,000 to 3,000 units, and I received an email yesterday that was based from our main manufacturing partner that was basically like, no more 2021 jobs, like
exactly
2022. And luckily we had planned for this some months in advance, and we'll still have new music out this year. But like, just to get that email is like, as priority, and it's not us at the plant.
Especially a company like yours, where let's say that your cash flow, was sort of based on this release schedule, and suddenly 6 months of cash flow are gone. What do you do?
Exactly.
And, it could be devastating. Could be devastating to a small specialty, indie label.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the cash flow is a big concern, especially when, you have terms with your distributor and you're not getting paid that day for an album that's sold in a record store. So yeah, certainly a concern. Like I said, we're lucky that we have a bunch of jobs already in the pipeline. Like, we're going to be okay, but I can't even imagine for labels even smaller than us that, or even just labels trying to enter into indie music, and maybe they're trying to get their first record pressed, and this is what they're dealing with. It's just, it can be a barrier to entry, I think, for a lot of folks that may want to get into this right now, which I don't think is a good thing. So.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess to kind of start to wrap things up, what are some of the most important lessons that you guys learned from last year? What have you taken and will continue to implement moving forward, regardless of COVID? And actually, we didn't even touch on the political landscape of last year, but I don't have to go into that. Anything that has really stuck with you that you're always going to take moving forward from this past year? Obviously, longer lead times is something. Making sure you treat your work as assets, as Rosie mentioned. Making sure your digital strategy is intact, even if those aren't traditional platforms for you. Anything else?
I would say more on the more on the boring side. I would say, as a company and how we run our company and how we kind of scout for artists and how we look for talent, I'd say our field of vision has widened a lot as a result of this, because the switch to remote got us better with technology. It opened up our options for hiring, for personnel. We can have people anywhere now. We didn't have people in Bogota last year. Now we do. Now we've got not only people helping with our projects, but we've got ears on the ground for what's going on locally there, which has always been a big disadvantage for us as a U.S.-based company focused on artists from Latin America. Is we're not actually there, so we're getting the reverberations a couple of stages later than some people who are more plugged in locally. So, frankly, being more comfortable with a remote team, with a team that's much more spread out, and because of technology that's possible, I think is making us more competitive. So I think that's going to stick
Great.
with us.
Yeah. I think same thing, you know, the internet, the focus, everything going online has allowed us to widen our net, you know, like in terms of the artists were, you know, before we were trying to see artists play live before signing an artist, and that's obviously hasn't been possible, you know, and we've sort of retooled that A&R strategy. We're willing to take more chances, and you know, also just thinking about inclusion more and all of the things that, you know, you didn't want to touch on the political stuff, but I think it's important to just note that the 2020 had an important, you know, an important role to play in everyone's thinking. And I think as long as we keep continuing to think differently, it'll be a positive change. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think contrast is really important, and we had loads of contrast. We had extremes, and I think the more that we see, you know, we wouldn't have seen what was wrong, I think, if we'd been living life as usual. So I think it gave us an opportunity to kind of like just quiet down, and for us, it was wonderful to see that we were more productive working remotely than we were working from the office. And you know, when you can cut,
You're only saying that because you were in Miami for the last month.
Well, I did spend a couple of months in London as well. I probably traveled more during COVID than I ever do, but I just spent longer time in each place. Which, by the way, traveling during COVID is not a bad thing, depending on how you travel. I mean, I had like a suit on, basically. All I needed was an oxygen tank, but I traveled or I drove, and you know, those are the two things. But I think overall, it was really just seeing that, you know, people are as productive working from home, even, you know, in their sweatpants, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Trevor, you are right. I think you know, the music industry specifically, we really kind of had like an awakening, if you will, last year when we had the Blackout Tuesday thing start, and just a different approach to the way that we hire and the artists that we support. And I really do think that is a positive, and I hope that everybody continues to maintain those values as we move forward. That's something that is so incredibly important to address. You're right. Yeah. So the last thing I'll ask you guys is, since this is about stories of resilience, if you had to give advice to a label, you know, who is still setting up strategy for this year, is there anything specific or encouraging that you would, you know, like to say, or anything that you think could really help them out?
Wow. I mean, there's a bunch of things. I would say it's a time where you need intense focus, and it's really have to keep your eye on the ball in every phase. I know we did, and I know it's the only way we survived was by putting this intense focus on the artists, and you know, figuring out ways to continue to make money is always going to be a challenge for independents, more so than ever. But I think speaking to your artists, and I think cultivating a relationship with fans directly is probably the most sustainable path for a lot of independent artists nowadays. And it's more possible now than ever before. So I would say take advantage of all of those tools and find ways to make them work within your artist sort of fan relationship, because they're here to stay. And I do think they remove a lot of the friction that's always been there for years. And I think, you know, it's one of the things we have the pandemic to thank for, is that those tools accelerated their adoption really, really quickly.
Okay.
I would say from just speaking about rolling out a new album, I think it's important to not be married to strategies of the past, to think differently. And we can release records in many different ways now, and to, you know, consistently creatively think about each project specifically and not just apply kind of the same technique to every release strategy, I think is important.
Great. Rosie's all about the maintaining of assets, which is a very, very important point.
It's all got a value, and we need it. And honestly, we need it all. But I would also say on the positive side, sync is back. I mean, this first quarter is unbelievable. I just got off the phone with a music supervisor that said, I'm going nuts. Like there's so much happening. And so I think we're all going to be pleasantly surprised. I think this is going to be a great year for the industry. And I think everyone should use A2IM and the resources and reach out to us if there's anything that we can help with. I'm always willing to answer an email or take a call and get more involved and stay involved with A2IM. You guys did such an amazing job at Indie Week and Liberos last year with all the challenges. I'm really excited about this year, and just thank you for the opportunity and inviting me to join and participate on this panel.
Yes, thank you guys all so much for taking time today. This has by far been like the most positive and inspirational conversation I have had yet about COVID. So I really appreciate that. And, I hope we were able to inspire some other people who are watching today. And like you said, let's just maintain that positivity and absolutely crush this year. I think it's going to be a great year for the industry as well.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, guys. I will. Of course, I will sign us off, and everybody else who's watching. Thank you for tuning in. We are going to archive this on our YouTube channel, where we have a bunch of other Indiescussions along with all of our other Indie Week panels from the past year and some other really good and educational content. So if you are so curious to check it out, I'll have somebody drop that in the chat just now. Thank you guys again, and see you all very soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.